everybody, how's it going? Today, let's take a detailed look at the very unique Pontiac Fiero GT. And this is going to be a detailed, in-depth review of the Fiero. We'll start up, show the engine, get an exhaust clipping over the performance data, as well as show you a bunch of the unique aspects of the interior, as well as exterior. And so, without further ado, let's go ahead and start her up, let her run. This exterior color is known as bright silver metallic, featuring a standard all-gray cloth interior. A unique and potent sound from that 2.8-liter V6.
The Fiero came standard with a manual rack and pinion steering, while an all-new speed-sensitive electro-hydraulic setup was actually being developed for 1988, although it never made it to production before the cars were discontinued. The very cool squared-off interior, typically seen in the 80s, is complemented by a simple and sporty 3-spoke leather-wrapped steering wheel, nice and soft with good grip and modest bolsters on the upper spokes. It's all nicely finished off with special badging on the horn cover for GT cars. The Fiero over the years was offered with a few different transmission options. When it first came out with the 4-cylinder models, you either had a 4-speed manual or a 3-speed automatic, but later on a 5-speed manual was available for the 4 cylinders and later then for the V6 models. So this particular one had either a 5-speed Getrag manual or this particular one's optional 3-speed automatic. With the automatic, you get a large leather-wrapped shift knob and complemented shift boot amongst a traditional flat housing with satin silver trim.
And so we're going to flip on the headlamps, as well as the hazards. Power windows are located in the center console. And we're going to check out the exterior, shall we?
The Pontiac Fiero, like the DeLorean DMC-12, is an unforgettable cult classic of the 1980s that came and went before its true potential as an affordable sports car was officially realized. It was also the first and only volume mid-engine domestic car ever produced. In fact, Fiero means proud in Italian and really represents the brand's excitement behind its release. A unique low-volume product to shake the market up a bit, while debuting new build techniques, organizational approaches, and collaboration efforts. While the Fiero did have its ups and downs in automotive press over its short life cycle, one thing remains true. What began as a corporate commuter with unique styling, between 1986 and 88, it molded into the competent performer that the original idea always intended for. Sadly, it ended up being too late, as the reputation had already been set with the early model's lackluster performance and suspension. Sales fell and the project was dropped, with 1988 being the final year of production. The concept of a small, two-seat Pontiac began as a vision in the mid-1960s by John DeLorean, then chief engineer of Pontiac, as well as Pete Estes, Pontiac's general manager at the time. The purpose was to add excitement back to the Pontiac brand, which by the mid-1960s were producing mostly large, full-size passenger cars. The original creation, known as the Banshee, would be pitted against the highly successful Ford Mustang as a two-person, fiberglass-bodied sports car with Pontiac's new overhead valve six-cylinder. Unfortunately, with GM fearful that the car would pose too much of a threat to the more expensive Corvette, the project never took off. It would be years before the concept would be brought up again, long after DeLorean left Pontiac and began his own company, and Estes became president of GM. When the plans of the Fiero were brought to the table in 1978, it was advertised as an alternative to the typical commuter car versus an all-out sports car. It would feature an innovative mid-engine, rear-wheel drive layout, low-cost, highly durable reinforced plastic body, and mileage promises upwards of 40 miles to a gallon. With a relatively low production budget of just over $400 million, many compromises were made for the original production vehicle in terms of power and performance. When the Fiero 2M4 hit the market for 1984, 2 for two-seater, M for mid-engine, and 4 for four-cylinder, many of the underpinnings were derived from GM's new X platform cars that came out for 1980, including the 2.5-liter Iron Duke four-cylinder mounted on a rubber-isolated cradle, similar suspension design, and transaxles. The rear suspension was essentially a 180-degree variant of the McPherson strut front suspension layout of the X platform front-wheel drive cars like the Chevrolet Citation. The front suspension was borrowed from the Chevrolet Chevette. While this did great for budget regions, it led to a not-so-sports car-like driving demeanor that the exterior design would contradict. Original gearboxes consisted of a 4-speed manual or 3-speed automatic. Because of the heavy engine, chassis, and carryover components, it was significantly heavier than the competition, which hurt performance a bit further. Despite this, Car and Driver named it one of the 10 best cars for 1984, and over 136,000 units were sold in the first year, far more than the competition, and it completely blew away initial production estimates. One of the Fiero's most significant innovations for its time was its high-strength galvanized steel space frame and EnduraFlex composite body panels. The space frame, creating an open, roomy interior, weighed only 600 pounds and was composed of 6 separate modules with 280 stampings that were then joined together with around 3,800 welds. Its rigidity was also quite good thanks to a wide central spine that also encompassed the fuel tank. Because of its size, the central console had to be designed taller to encompass the large central spine. Since the car has a front-mounted radiator, the frame also has integral passages for the coolant lines that run the length of the vehicle. The body panels are made of 3 different composite materials and are known as unstressed members, meaning that they were first painted off the car, then bolted to the frame, and don't actually serve as structural components. They're easy to change out and resist rust and dings, also making body repairs cinch. Rigid sheet-molded compound were used where more solidity was needed, such as the roof, front and rear deck lids, headlamp covers, and the upper rear quarter panels. Reinforced reaction-injected molded plastic was the main material that resists typical dents and dings, and make up the portions that are most likely to be inflicted, such as the doors, front fenders, and lower rear quarters. The front and rear bumper covers are made up of reaction-injected molded polyurethane. In 1985, Fiero benefited from a well-welcomed performance upgrade thanks to the option of a fuel-injected 2.8-liter V6, offering nearly 50 more horsepower and 40 pound-feet of torque more than the four-cylinder. With increased power came decreased fuel economy though with the Fiero's small 10.2-gallon tank. It was later enlarged for 1987 to 12 gallons. While the Iron Duke did receive performance enhancements between 87 and 88, and increased from 92 to 98 horsepower, the real performer was still the V6. Also for 1985, a new 5-speed manual, licensed from Isuzu, replaced the 4-speed and 4-cylinder models. While that transaxle couldn't handle the output of the V6, it too benefited from an extra gear in the latter part of 1986 with the Getrag-built 5-speed manual. The 3-speed auto remained the same as before. Also, in addition to base and fancier SE trims, a new sport-oriented GT model debuted for 1985 that came standard with the V6, unique front and rear clips seen on the 1984 Fiero Indianapolis 500 pace car, as well as a WS6 sport suspension which included unique springs and shocks with cast aluminum staggered wheels. Towards 1986 is where the Fiero really started coming into its own, offering a new fastback styling on GT models versus the notchback of standard cars. The fastback had small rear quarter windows that gave it the appearance of a hatch from the sides, not to mention unique tail lamps and body cladding. It also featured the WS6 suspension and larger 15-inch staggered wheels. It's also 5.1 inches longer than the base notchback and has marginal improvements in coefficient of drag. The most significant changes for the Fiero came in 1988 with a $30 million investment from GM. First, an all-new Formula model debuted that gave V6 performance and suspension upgrades to enhance the SE notchback. 1988 was also the only year you could opt for yellow paint or optional T-tops. Other minor improvements included a 120-mile-an-hour speedometer, a new in-pan oil filter and revised balance shaft for 4 cylinders, and ventilated disc brakes versus the previous solid discs. The most significant upgrades, though, came with the steering and suspension systems. The front was an all-new coil spring design that not only made it handle better thanks to new control arms and knuckles, but it also improved the turning radius and steering effort thanks to improved geometry. In the rear, a new tri-link suspension features softer springs and more aft wheel movement for a smoother ride and improved road manners on rough pavement. The engine cradle was also revised and includes beefier knuckles, new struts, forward trailing links, solid mounts, and a rear sway bar. It was also the first car to be designed with a new electro-hydraulic power steering pump, although it never made it to production before the lineup was discontinued. Because the engine is positioned behind the driver, an engine-driven pump would have been impractical, so they engineered an electric motor to drive the hydraulics. What this means is that if the engine suddenly shuts off, power steering is still retained as long as the vehicle's power is turned on. Steering boost would have also been speed sensitive, making it easier to turn at slow speeds, with increasing resistance at increased speeds with higher wheel turning effort and control. Sadly, with rapidly slumping sales from a tainted past of early reliability problems, the writing was on the wall there, with GM deciding to pull the plug after 1988. The Fiero GT, with its WS6 suspension, featured the optional diamond spoke staggered alloy wheels either finished in dark gray or painted gold, 15 by 6.5 inches in front and 15 by 7 inches in the rear, wrapped in sticky Goodyear Eagle GT radials, 205/60s in front and 215/60s in the rear. This configuration also improved handling, leading to upwards of 0.86 G in lateral cornering forces. The car always came standard with solid 4-wheel disc brakes, but in '88 they were improved to larger ventilated discs. They're able to bring the Fiero to a stop from 60 miles an hour at approximately 130 feet. Overall length is 165.1 inches with a width of 69 inches and a height of 46.9 inches with a 93.4 inch wheelbase. Total curb weight is around 2,778 pounds.
So we'll go ahead and pop the trunk and the engine cover.
As we touched on earlier, original Fieros were powered by a 92 horsepower, 2.5-liter 4-cylinder nicknamed the Iron Duke. But in 1985, a new 2.8-liter V6 became available and standard on GT models. The 60-degree V6 was designed originally by Chevrolet but tuned by Pontiac for a bit more power, largely thanks to a free-flowing exhaust system. Constructed with cast iron block and aluminum heads, it featured a compression ratio of 8.5 to 1, as well as computer-controlled multi-point fuel injection, a big thing for its day. For 1986, it produces 140 horsepower at 5,200 RPM and 170 pound-feet of torque at 3,600 RPM with a red line of 6,000 RPM. Top speed is 125 miles an hour compared to 103 miles an hour for the 4-cylinder. This translates to 0 to 60 times of 8 seconds and quarter-mile times of 15.7 seconds at 87 miles an hour. Performance for the 4-cylinder included 0 to 60 of 10.9 seconds and quarter-mile times of 17.9 seconds at 77 miles an hour, so you can see what a difference the 6 made. As far as fuel economy for the 6-cylinder, with the original 10.2-gallon tank, it was between 21 city and 28 on the highway, but with the 4-cylinder you got a little bit of increased mileage, 25 city, 32 on the highway. The low-slung interior of the Fiero boasts more room than you would initially expect from its exterior dimensions. The space frame is packaged in a way that it allows for ample breathing room for both passengers even with the tall center console. Build quality is pretty average of what you would expect from the typical 1980s commuter car, but the love it or hate it squared-off interior design is one of its coolest factors in my opinion, and in a way looks like a different take on the DeLorean if the exterior didn't already give you a little bit of deja vu. Across the doors you have rubberized soft-touch plastic trim up top as well as cloth down below and unique cloth Fiero door pockets. Your handle as well as power locks and manual mirrors are located up top. Like I said, power mirrors were also an option. Taking a closer look at the interior, the Fiero seats could be had in a few different styles of cloth as well as suede and leather in some of the later models. The grippy bucket seats feature a nice amount of lateral support up top and down below with a reasonable amount of overall comfort. It doesn't have height adjustment, but it does have recline as well as sliding functions. Of course, black color accent piping give a little bit more of a tailored aspect, Fiero badging on the back of the seats as well as a charcoal gray accent strip. In the fixed headrest, earlier cars also had the option of 2 headrest mounted speakers, but they were later discontinued after 1985 due to production costs. Across the bottom, your e-brake is located to the left-hand side of the driver's seat, flat floorboard, as well as a little bit of all-weather protection and dead pedal, as well as a standard tilting steering wheel. The dash design pretty much encompasses all of the instruments as well as the center stack with the projecting outer vents, creating a very unique styling cue. To make the interior even more accommodating for taller individuals, the padded headliner also features 2 cutouts to give you plenty of headroom for wiggling around.
So let's go ahead and see how she sounds.
With its short wheelbase and wide stance, the Fiero definitely handles well for what it is, despite critiques of the original suspension design. For spirited cruising for the everyday car enthusiast through curvy roads, it feels zippy and agile, definitely bringing a smile to your face. The Fiero originally came with an AM/FM radio with optional cassette deck. This one has a newer Pontiac CD player. With any of the available systems, it also had the option of the Performance Sound System. This system consisted of a single 5 1/4-inch subwoofer in an enclosed box that was mounted underneath the passenger side of the dash. It projects down 3 inches with the woofer facing down. It also has its own separate amplifier mounted alongside it behind the carpeting, providing deep, rich bass and controlled via a switch that I'll highlight in just a second.
Cloth visors, as well as a standard manually dimming rearview mirror. And on the top stack are your reading lamps and the rest of your interior illumination, as well as the performance sound controller up top for minimum boost or maximum. And you can probably really hear the difference. Now, like I said, this Fiero has been fitted with a newer CD player from a Pontiac Firebird, so it is kept within the family. Also, very simple to use, just like the original. Your preset stations are in the middle here, random tracks, rewind and fast forward, and then go in between previous and next tracks. Seek, tune, AM/FM, as well as your volume and power control, CD play, eject, graphic equalizer, as well as your balance and fade, not to mention your clock adjustment in the bottom right hand corner. Continuing up the console is your air conditioning and heater controls, with your fan speed, temperature, as well as different modes. your center-mounted air vents, keeping with that rectangular theme, as well as a set of auxiliary gauges up top for your voltometer, as well as oil pressure. Now as we come down the center console, power mirrors would also be an option in later Fiero years and would be located in between the mirror controls. Ashtrays, located on either side of the gear selector, pretty common of this era. Your lighter, smooth padded center console, as well as a storage compartment located in between the seats. Your rear speakers are located right behind the seat belts, and there's also coat hooks up top. On the right-hand side of your speedometer cluster, you have your trunk and engine cover release like I showed you earlier, as well as your rear defrost controls. To the left-hand side are your lighting controls, as well as interior lighting dimmer. The gauges also keep with the brushed silver theme, also found in the center console, as well as around the gauges. Very easy to comprehend with all of your necessary gauges, speedometer, tachometer, warning lamps, odometer up top, as well as your vehicle temperature and fuel in the middle. This Fiero actually only has around 35,000 original miles. And the only other controls in your steering wheel are your wipers located to the far left there. Very quirky design interior. Ergonomics are not too bad, and definitely sporty for the day. So we're going to shut her down. So let's go ahead and open the front.
Because the majority of your storage space is located in the compartment behind the engine bay, up here is just the rest of the vehicle's components. You have the access to your headlamps for changing the bulbs, as well as your front-mounted radiator, temporary spare tire, fluid reservoirs, AC controls, as well as your brake booster. All nice and conveniently accessible for easy repairs and replacement.
So let's go ahead and check out the rest of the vehicle, shall we? You also have a little storage pocket on the passenger door, lined in felt, as well as the same manual adjustments for the passenger seat that you would find on the driver's side. Now, because the Fiero's engine is behind the front seats, the front floorboard is pretty much flat all the way here. And I'm 5'11", and I can stretch my feet out and just barely touch the firewall beneath the dash. So there's plenty of room to stretch out for the passenger. And there's no glove box, but just a little padded storage compartment with the Fiero logo stitched in the back. Something else that's pretty neat too, is the passenger side also has a dead pedal off to the right, in case you want to prop your leg up.
The Pontiac Fiero was a unique concept, an affordable, sporty car with unique looks, innovative build, and engine layout. Although it took a few years to really dial it in as a true sports car, these have become highly collectible over the years, whether for modifying or collecting. Like the DeLorean, it'll always have a special cult following for those who truly appreciate what it's all about.
Well everyone, I hope you enjoyed the in-depth review of the 1986 Pontiac Fiero GT. Be sure to stay tuned next time, there's a lot more where that came from. Take care everybody.